G'day, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and today, guys, we are back, and we're back for a big one. I have got my regular co-host, Mr. Big Jimmy Ibrahim, back in the studio. Mate, how are you? Welcome back.
G'day, Sammy. G'day, listeners. Great to be back up here in the GC.
Mate, how good, how good. And an episode style that is directly up your alley, mate, exactly what you like talking about, and that is grit, and why grit will determine your investing outcomes. Mate, this is something that I've actually been wanting to talk about for quite a while around this. Yeah, man, I have. Ever since we did that episode back at I think it was the 100th ep, where we're kind of talking about, everything within that, and we spoke about the grit and the passion and people's determination determining their success. And it made me really kind of, it put in the memory bank of like, you know what, I want to do an ep around this thing, and I want to talk about why it's so important. It just kind of percolated in my mind, why it's so important there. And I know, like, obviously mindset's one of the big things that you always love to cover, and yeah, man, I thought it'd be good to jump in here, get in the studio, mate, and talk about it, and talk about why it is so important. And mate, give us what's your opinion on it, mate?
Well, I think on this podcast we often talk about the tangible things. There's the numbers, there's the facts, there's research, there's a lot of things you can quantify when it comes to property and investing. But there's certainly the intangible things, often the things that are in between your two ears, and the self-talk and the dialogue and those challenges that you can't really put a finger on. And we have done a lot of podcasts on mindset and your mentality and all that, and we'll continue to do so because it is the most important thing. Yeah. You can know everything, but if you're not going to do something and take action,
longevity in the game is so key, you know, and I think like the more that that's why we don't need to do these things monthly or whatever, but like when we're doing these things at least a couple of times a year, 3-4 times a year, whatever, it's just kind of continuing to hammer in. That's why I keep calling it the mindset series. So people know what they're walking into when they're coming into these episodes. They're all about the grit, the determination, the passion, what makes you keep the longevity in the game and actually succeed in this. Because the biggest fall point I see in so many investors that they make is they can't get past those first few years, especially if they've gone hard, and then they might have a couple of hard years after it, sort of thing. If they're not used to it and they haven't built that bandwidth of maybe 5 properties over 5 years, and instead they do 5 properties in 2 years, there's a lot of stuff that they're going to get hit with very early, and they have to mentally prepare for that, or they're not going to be able to handle it. So it's been amazing to watch, man.
And can I ask, just to answer that? Sorry, to add to your point, right? When you think about
too many stakes, mate. You and I were stumbling over the words.
When you think about an elite athlete,
are you thinking about me right now?
You're the furthest from an elite.
I'm not thinking about you. I am not thinking about you. In that Rocky Balboa t-shirt.
You wouldn't know one. That's why I've got the Rocky Balboa t-shirt on today, folks. It's all about grit.
Is that your definition of grit?
Well, it's going to tie into it because there's a lot of great analogies with Rocky. However, getting back to my point,
give me your most famous quote.
Before you interrupt, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how. Start that again. It's not about how hard you get hit. No, hold on. What is it?
It's not how hard you get hit. It's how many times you can get hit and keep on moving forward.
It is.
What is it? It is. I'm claiming that now.
Yeah. It's not how hard you. No, it's not even how hard you get hit.
I don't even know.
It's anyway. We're gonna cut all that.
Fuck off. That's funny. You and your waffle.
Yeah. Anyway, an elite athlete, Sammy boy. They are going to be having a conversation with a sports scientist.
I'll give you my favorite quote from Apollo Creed. Okay. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow.
That is one of the best.
That is the best.
Yeah, that is
I went to look it up and then I remembered it before I pulled it up.
There are so many great quotes from Rocky, but Rocky 5, the one that you're referring to, is one of the best scenes that Rocky, when he talks to his son, and he says, it's about how you keep getting up and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. That is one of the great iconic scenes in Rocky. But can I just get out this point? An elite athlete will speak with his sports psychologist regularly.
Yes.
He doesn't go and see him once a year and go, yeah, I've already seen him. I've already seen Jono. No. Every time they're going to see that. I remember watching a doco on a bodybuilder, and before his competitions, the sports psych will come in and chat with him just to get his mindset right. Just goes to show you how important this is. This is like having a shower. You should be doing it daily, getting your mindset ready.
I think the other big thing as well, man, is it's like the consistency of pushing yourself and getting yourself uncomfortable, right? Because when you're uncomfortable, you're getting hit with things that you don't really like, but you keep pushing the envelope, you keep working through this sort of stuff and achieving anything great, whether it's sport or business or property or whatever you're doing, investing and all the rest of the sort of stuff. You have to push beyond the comfort zone to achieve the greatest things, right?
Yeah.
The greatest results.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the really key thing of continuing to move forward here. And, man, all the greatest athletes in the world, they don't get there. All right, there's a bit of natural talent that comes in there, but then it literally is the persistence. And you look at, say, a Cristiano Ronaldo, amazing weapon of a soccer player, amazing talent, but he works harder. Literally every player that's ever played with him says that he has worked harder than anyone they've ever seen before. You look at Beckham, he'd spend 2 hours on free kicks and then he'd run 30 Ks every session. He's like just crazy shit.
Yeah.
To become that level of eliteness. And I think it's the same thing. You can't expect to have great results in property without having to go through a few things and still weather it and push through it and have that grit determination to keep pushing forward.
Isn't it true? When you look at every elite athlete, like even the stories of Jordan or Kobe Bryant, and all of he'd ruffle up his own players because his intensity or his mindset
100%.
application made people feel uncomfortable.
Yes, definitely.
So we don't need to go to that level of just
course.
pissing off your whole family.
Yeah, of course.
And all your mates. But I love the word grit. And I'm curious, how did you come up with that? Like when you were talking about grit, because you obviously came up with the topic, it's an interesting word.
It
Right?
is.
So we did a bit of research around this word.
I did. I was curious. I don't even know what it was. I think it was when I spoke about it. And then I was like, I wonder what the actual definition is. You know me, man. I never have the laptop open. But I put in the definition by the Oxford Dictionary.
Yeah.
It's courage and resolve, strength of character. I think strength of character is the big one. Because when you got grit or determination as an athlete, it's the ability to keep moving forward. You know what I mean? And like whatever hits you, you're just still going and going. Or you might have passion. People might refer to you as a passionate player and things like that. Because you just keep going and the little things don't push you off. And like the way that I look at it, grit is persisting on a continued basis through tough times. So no matter what happens, you keep pushing and pushing. And things are going to hit you, but you keep moving through them. And sometimes as well, it's almost like relishing that opportunity of things hitting you and then overcoming them and then hitting it and going again. And it's just part of the cycle, part of the process. But you just keep moving past it. And what you will find is you'll become better and better at handling situations. You become a more experienced investor. And your bandwidth for this stuff increases and your ability to handle it increases. You either tap out, game over, see you later, all over, or you grow, you get better, you get bigger, and you take it out.
Yeah. We often talk about athletes because we both love sport, right?
Yep.
Even though I was a better athlete than you.
But I never knew you either played sport.
But for
You don't look like you've ever gotten into any sort of workout gear in the ever.
But when you think about the practical situation for a lot of people in their life, you might be, a single parent that's raising your kids. You got to go to work. You're trying to put food on the table, like the grit to keep going and keep moving forward. You might have been fired from a job or let go, or you're trying to reinvent yourself. Like grit doesn't necessarily mean just for athletes. Grit is, as you said, it's the perseverance of the long-term goal. Perseverance.
Literally anyone can have grit in any field or any aspect of life. Like literally, like you said before, it might be it could be literally a single mum with 3 kids or whatever, and she's working through it and whatnot. Or it could be the business owner that gets hit with a heap of things. He's got to have the grit and determination. Like these are the things that will sort the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean? Like you're either going to be able to move past these things and become big and great and successful, or you're going to allow them to cripple you and you're going to stay in whatever line. You know what I mean? The bottom.
I was looking
or where
up,
you are, because where you are, again, being comfortable, you might just be comfortable where you are. You don't have the grit determination to push yourself to the next level that you might really want to go.
This lady when I was doing the research, when you sent this through, this lady she's a professor of psychology in University of Pennsylvania. And it was interesting when she was writing it, she's an expert in grit, apparently.
Okay.
And she said, one way to think about grit is to consider what it isn't. And she says, and I thought this was quite relevant, grit isn't talent. Grit isn't luck. Grit isn't how intensely for the moment you want something. Instead, it's about having the ultimate concern of the goal you care about so much that it gives meaning to almost everything you do. So that long-term goal, and it's holding steadfast to that goal.
Yeah.
If you really want it. And it's exactly what you're talking about. Even when you fall down, even when you screw up. It's just talent and luck matter to success, but talent and luck are no guarantee of grit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really good. So in the long run, grit may matter. It's going to matter a lot more than those other aspects.
Yeah, 100%.
And the great thing is it's free.
I think it applies to everything, right, as well. So this is one of the big things. The same as what I said before. It doesn't just need to be obviously the talent, and you could be a great storyteller, you could be great at doing deals, or you could be good at this or that or whatever. But ultimately, it's only going to get you so far. And I think the application, the ability to keep pushing beyond these things and just keep succeeding from that perspective, it comes down to grit and determination from that. And man, this probably isn't going to be a big episode, realistically. Like the way we're going to talk about this thing, we're going to break it down. But ultimately, like this is one of the things, guys, and I know we're banging on about this a fair bit, but this is one of those items. And we've had people before that have hit us up and gone, having a whinge about this or that, and they're up 150 grand, and they're whinging about $1,000 repair from a property that was bought 12, 18 months ago. Yeah. And it's like taking the whole picture into account and taking these things in your stride because it's part of the journey, and realizing that if you want to build something significant here, it is going to have to take years of grit and determination to walk through and cop these things, probably for, let's say, 5 years of heavy accumulation, and then you might be consolidating over another 5-year period. You have to have 10 years of strength of character and grit and determination to get through and achieve these end goals as well. So it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And it's something that if maybe you don't have the highest strength of character right now, and some people may not have been brought up in the environment where they had to build that strong sense of will and character, right? And that's a reality of life. It doesn't mean you can't build it by now going through these stuff, being self-conscious of the things that are your weaknesses, working on them. And it might just be like when these triggers pop up that like ordinarily you would have crumbled under. Well, how do I now turn this around and look at this thing of like, okay, how do I handle this thing? How do I move past it? How do I keep moving forward? And sometimes that can be like when I look at myself in my own journey, it was hitting the supposed ceiling with lending. And I had 7 brokers that rejected me and said, no, you can't do anything before I found the one. It took me almost a year to find one broker that said, yes, this is how we can do it. This is how you can do it. I could have tapped out after 1, 2, 5, 7, but 8. Like there was the 8th one that I found the result in. And I think this is the thing, man. Like you have to have that within you to be able to keep moving forward. Now, if you're working with a great team, that's a beautiful part of them being able to link you up with the right people that can help you moving forward. But this is one of those things where you can't have that sort of success, but then take no for an answer.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where like overcoming the no is the definition of grit.
Yeah.
I should have been stopped so many times through the journey, so many times, through so many pieces of the puzzle. Kept pushing. That's how it got to the level I'm at now.
The bad news for people is you can't buy grit, right? The good news is that once you go through it, you get to keep it.
Yeah, grit is earned.
So it's like one of those things. You don't want to have to go through it, but you know that you're going to be better for it. And I know I've mentioned this previously in the podcast, but I remember the very first gym we wanted to open as a franchise, and we found this location, and the franchisor said it was a shit site.
Yep.
Don't buy it.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Actually, they didn't even want to give us they didn't want us to be a franchisor because we didn't have enough money.
They were so sure it was going to go
They
fail.
thought this place was going to go crap. Yep. That we couldn't get finance.
They looked at you in the rig and they go, how's a gym going to perform with this guy? Like, it's
Look
not
at
going
his
to happen.
guns.
There's no grit in this man.
And they thought this is not going to work. And so we got so many no's that it conditioned you to understand that no was a part of the journey. So you just accepted the no's. Yeah. And then you moved forward and you got through and you got the result. So if you said no.
If you take the no.
Yeah.
If you accept
if you
the
take
no.
it.
Yeah. I think this is the biggest thing. People want to be the investor, right? And they want to do this and do that. And then like, I set these big goals. And then when these things pop up, they're like, oh, it's a no. I can't do anything right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get in your own head about this. I literally just thought I was a no when I was like 22, 23, because I had 2 properties. I didn't make that much money. I was like, surely, I couldn't even imagine, that anyone's going to give me any money from this thing. Because ANZ, who was my first bank, said no after the first 2. So I didn't even go ask a broker or anything. And then it wasn't until I went and asked, and then I realized there was a few doors open, and then I scaled up to the next bit. But I cost myself time because I talked myself out of it because one person said no initially. And yeah, man, I'm going to dive back to one thing you said before because you were talking about what you were talking about. Kind of led into, definitely not from you, something that you were talking about there led into, I was thinking about strength of character, right? And talking about things being owned. And I think it takes a tremendous amount of reflective ability to know if you were born, not even born, you're made of it, right? A lot of the time with your upbringing. So if you had a very cushy upbringing, there's probably a really good chance you don't have the strongest strength of character. And that's not like, that might sound rough there, right? But what I mean is like you look at like the best fighters and athletes and everything that comes out of the world, the guys with the biggest grit, a lot of time like that, it's because they've had to work their way out of that and they've had to go through so much shit to get there. And that's why I'm not saying that like maybe they don't have a good level of strength of character. And maybe if they've been an athlete and they've had to go through a few different things, they might have gone through it. But if they had more of that cushy upbringing, they kind of had everything given to them in life. You can probably imagine who I'm talking about in this scenario that I grew up with. They don't build that strength of character. So when things come up, they can't handle it.
Yeah.
Right? And so they accept defeat or they try and take the cheat option when in reality, hard work is what gives you results. And the more that you do that in life, the more you come to respect money and respect yourself. And that's where you earn that strength of character and that grit. And you have to earn it. And whether you earn it as a child or as a teenager or whatever, working your way out of the shit scenario that you're in, or whether you have to, even if you're doing it now and you've got that great self-reflective ability of going, all right, I'm probably a little bit too reactive to these things happening because I haven't had that much hard stuff happen in my life. I've just kind of cruised, regardless of what your life is. But now I'm getting some things thrown at me and I'm aware enough of the fact that I'm probably being a bit too soft about this stuff. And I have to look at it as this is the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, a couple of things went wrong. Yeah, okay, something happened with a tenant. Yeah, property manager's a piece of shit. Whatever. These things happen. We're dealing with bricks and mortar and people. So these things happen. And I think understanding that these things are going to happen as you're getting into the journey, you're going to set yourself up for success. People come in and sometimes, the deal process can be smooth as anything, especially if you're working with us. Like that's one thing we pride ourselves on, the smoothness of transaction.
Yeah.
But in reality, once it goes past that, as much as we're there to help you, at the end of the day, it's your property, it's your investment that you've got to manage as an individual, right? You've got to take some responsibility for this. And I think as things pop up, and especially people wanting to buy, cheaper, lower end sort of properties, older properties, these sorts of things pop up. That there's great upsides for these styles of deals, but there's also things you have to be aware of that come with that style of asset as well. So I think it's one of these things that walking into it with your eyes wide open and not just thinking this is just, it's like buying a share and there's no headache or anything with it. You're just watching it, whatever. It's not that. Obviously, we're talking bricks and mortar. We've got leveraged ability. We can manipulate it.
Yeah.
These are all the different things that we can work with this asset, but things are going to pop up.
Well, shit's going to happen. I mean, that's one of the points here. Shit will happen. Expect it. And learn to handle it, I think is what you're getting at, is learn to handle it.
Yeah.
If you're going in there thinking it's going to be sunshine and rainbows every day, you're doomed.
And sometimes like something big will happen. I've had these things where something big will happen. And I had this property just recently and I have not had an issue with this property. Actually, I'll tell you right now. So you remember the property in Adelaide, right?
The Mount Gambier bargain?
No. The very first one I ever bought in Adelaide, 155 grand. The thing's worth like over 400 grand now, right? I've never had an issue, never had an expensive maintenance bill on this thing. And I'm planning on potentially selling it at some point in the near future.
Okay.
And man, I have not had a maintenance request on it. And the roofs come to the end of its life. And I'm looking at this thing going, I'm probably like, I got a limited time frame I need to still hold this thing for, in my opinion, of when I'm going to be exiting. And I've got a rectification. And then I've got a roof replacement. And I'm looking at this thing going, fuck. Like,
how much do you think?
It's just over 20 grand for a roof replacement. It's about just under 2 grand for a rectification, but there's no guarantee it works. They're not willing to warranty it. And so it's like, if I spend that, I'm going to have to come back and have to spend that. And you know me, man, I hate wasting money.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do I go all in? But then I'm like, fuck, I really don't want to spend
20
grand on it. And then so I'm like, and at first I got angry. I'm like, oh, like this property. And then I'm like firing up. And then I'm like, this property's never caused me a headache. And now like it's getting close to this time to exit. And now I've got to do this bloody expensive thing. And I'm thinking about it. And then like the more I was getting worked up about it. And then I took a step back and had a look at it. And I'm like, this thing has not caused me issues in a millennia, almost as old as you. This thing hasn't caused me issues in like 8 years of ownership of it, right? Never had a maintenance thing on it. And now I've got this decision to make. So then I went back and we negotiated with the tradesmen who were doing the rectification. They gave us I could negotiate a 6-month warranty on it. I'm like, that's enough to warrant me going down that avenue and going through that avenue and keeping it together. But I think like this is a small example, but it's very recent because it literally happened in the last week. And these are the things that pop up, and then working a solution. I'll throw the other one. The only property I've ever had that that I was really worried about. That I thought when I bought it was a great deal, and it's still an amazing deal. But I bought this house. I was going to extensively renovate it. We're going to lift it, build in under, position it to a new point on the block, subdivide it, build another one, and the house was too far gone. So after I bought it, and I bought it for a steal, but after I bought it, the house was too far gone. I couldn't actually rectify this thing. I had to knock it over. I had to vacate the tenants because the house was literally unlivable at the time.
Wow.
And yeah, man, I had to go through this process. But then as we're trying to go through and get this thing quoted up and get it rectified, the boys are just like, my builders are just like pulling apart, and they go, man, like, this thing's going to blow out. Like, we thought it was going to be about 80 to 100, and now it's turning into 150. And they're like, realistically, man, we're going to have to literally strip this whole thing back and almost like rebuild it from scratch. We're looking at like 200 to 250. And I was just like losing my mind on this thing. And then, yeah, man, I worked out a solution. I ended up having to demo it. So I had this salty taste in my mouth on this property for over 6 months. The only property I was like, I'd never lost money on a property. And realistically, I could sell it right now. It's 800 square meter corner block, a subdividable. I paid $250 for it. I could sell it right now. And I bought it in late 21. I could sell it right now for probably $500,000-600,000. Okay.
Wow.
No house on it. Well, there is a house on it now. But what I'm saying is, taking that bigger picture into account, and yes, that one for me, and this is the sort of deal I'd never put onto a client. But I remember when I did that, I was so salty because I was like, I fucked this up. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't supposed to. I'd never made a mistake on a deal where I was going to lose money, and I bought it so cheap I knew I wasn't going to. But at the same time, it's just like it was never going to give me the return that it was going to. And then when I stood back and looked at it, and I was looking for solutions. And started looking more for the solutions and how do I get a result out of this thing rather than just seeing purely the problems around this. And then a solution popped up. And it was really like weird coincidence how this popped up, but I was looking for them at the time. It was almost like I kind of brought it into my existence of this thing happening. Yeah, man, and it was wild what I've turned this thing into now. I'll probably make $700,000-800,000 off this thing in like a 2-year window. So I was going from something that was just going to be like a mediocre, probably the worst performer in my portfolio, to like in a 3-year window, I'll turn around with like a ridiculous return on it. And man, I think this is the thing, like, you've got to look for the solutions always. And looking for the solutions is the thing. People, they have issues pop up and issues happen, and they'll just eat into and dig into all the bad stuff and all the bad reasons and all the problems and all the worst case scenarios, right? Instead of just looking for the solution. And so often when you actually, and even with myself there, if I all right, I run a pretty busy business, and I've also got a pretty big portfolio. There's a lot of shit going on for me to step back and then have a good look at this thing and make the solution, but I should have done that. And then when I actually gave myself some breathing room to do it, the path opened up as to what was possible on it as well. And that even happens to someone like myself that invests as much as myself. So for the average person going out there, you got to slow down sometimes, have a look at these things, work the solution, because what you will find, and I found this heaps when I was younger, when I didn't have the business, I was just renovating. That was me. I was just solutions man.
Yeah.
How do I create a solution? Okay, this is everyone else's problem. How do I create a solution from this which actually solves the problem, and then I can profit on that?
Yeah.
And that's how I always built my portfolio. And yeah, man, that's literally what I always did. So, and doing that and having that mindset, it builds so much of that ability to keep pushing past things and the grit and just like, yeah, I'm going to find this. I'll find the solution, find the solution, find the solution. And that's where these things sort of, eventuate and come from.
Do you think you developed that through property, or you developed that previously with sport and you've applied it to property?
First came from family, then through sport. Family bred into me a way that I then played sport, and then I played sport in a way that I then did property, and then I did property and sport in the same vein of what I took into business.
So the good news is for people listening is that if you have not achieved this in property, but you've developed a certain amount of grit or solution focus in any other aspect of your life, this is a transferable thing. So you are set up to be successful for this.
Even if you haven't got it, this and learning this through property could set you up for the rest of your life
for other things,
to be an absolute beast at anything else in life.
Yeah.
And looking for this and getting better at this and becoming extremely skilled at this with that solutions focused.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, man. Like the people who've got the grit and the determination, they're looking for they're looking for how do I kick it. And sometimes you just got to push through it. Sometimes there isn't the solution other than just like getting through and pushing through these things.
Doing it, yeah,
exactly.
Taking action. And as you said before, mistakes are going to happen. Sometimes you're going to do something and it might not work out exactly what you're doing. But if you let that define you and limit you to do anything else, then That is not grit. That is the opposite of grit.
Yep.
It's interesting when you see when I was listening to a lot of different things about investing before I started working with you, and someone said to me, "Oh, no, I don't invest in shares anymore. I got wiped out in the GFC," and I was thinking about it. I was thinking, how did you get wiped out? So that person hasn't invested any more beyond 2008 because they lost some money. And if you look at the market in shares from 2008 to now, it is like literally doubled I don't know how much it's grown.
Yeah.
So that person has let that decision define them. So in property, if you bought a bad deal and it stuffed up, and you're like, no, I don't, I had a bad tenant, I don't want to do it anymore. That is defining you. So you cannot, the reality is you can't let that limit your ability to go forward.
You can't be purely defined by your wins, right? So like it wouldn't be right to say you're purely defined by your wins or that you're purely defined by your losses, right? Because then like it doesn't 100% marry up. But I would almost argue the fact that you would be more defined by your losses and what you potentially made out of it. And if you didn't make anything out of it in terms of turning those around into wins, and it's pretty hard. If you wipe everything out in the GFC and then you sell it all off and you lose it all right, that's a loss, right? But what did you learn from that?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. The biggest lessons I've ever learned have been from the losses, not from the wins.
100%.
And so often, the biggest wins I've ever had after have come from the knowledge I gained from the losses.
That's right.
And so often, like these things, you don't know it at the time, but when you go through and you push through and you find these solutions and these answers, it builds for so much more that you can then take it to. And I think this is where a lot of people don't realize it. Like old mate who tapped out after that point. Man, assess what you did wrong. Are you just going to blame the market and bury your head in the sand for the next 15 years like it sounds like he has done? Or are you going to have a look at what you did wrong? Or is there a different, what are the other things that you potentially could have succeeded from with this? Or is there a better asset class that you can get more understanding around that's not as volatile that you can leverage into from that side as well? I don't know, man. It's just like these different things,
Even with your own internally, your own fear or doubt, I guarantee you, if you have a crack at something and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you'll be more at peace with yourself than if you didn't have a crack.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm talking about from experience. I mean, that festival business that we created for before COVID, we were in our third year. We had spent 3 years, I don't know how many hours producing this thing, and we did a couple of years, spent I think $500,000 of my own capital with other partners spent their money. That business went into liquidation. We didn't make a cent out of that. But we spent 3 years working on it on the hope that it would work, and it didn't work. So if you only ever were guaranteed a win, you will never take action on anything. So there's the delayed gratification of thinking, I'm going to do this now, not knowing if it's going to work. But I guarantee you will sleep better at night and you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror by saying, I had a crack and I gave it my best. And if it didn't work, you'll be at peace with yourself. Regret weighs tons. Regret is the worst thing you can have. Is you get to the end and you go, you know what?
I wish I did
this. I wish I did that. Yeah. Whereas if you have a crack, you're either going to learn from it or you're going to figure it out and you're going to get it. You're going to surprise yourself and then you're going to gain the confidence and the strength to keep going. So I think that's what we're trying to instill in people here is the mindset around all the grit or that unrelenting ability to stay focused on what you deserve is what grit is all about. And it's such a great word. It's a dirty word. It's like,
I know,
I love it, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Because you don't need to be talented to have grit.
Yeah.
Everyone's level. Doesn't matter what school you went to or your parents live in a fancy house and all that. I actually love it when if I'm, not that you're competing against these people, but when you're competing against people that you know that they've had a softer upbringing because you know that they don't have the grit.
Yeah. Because they won't push as hard as you will. They won't stay in the game as long as you will.
So use that as your superpower. I say to people when I get on the call, if they feel like they've been hard done by this, I'm like, dude, you don't know. That is your superpower.
Yeah. Because you can use it to fire you up.
You can use it.
100%. Why do you think I got so much fire, man? The amount of shit I went through when I was younger and everything. Like it literally, it puts the fire in you. You know what I mean? And it's like, but it doesn't matter if you didn't go through that same thing. You can still push through things now. So you get a bit of pushback. You get that uncomfortable situation. Okay, maybe you're not the first place in this thing, but the pushback and then the grit and then having to get past it, then you start leveling up.
Well, the reason why we're talking about it, especially if people haven't been through it now, is that if you want to achieve anything meaningful, if you want to achieve 100 grand, 200 grand passive in portfolio, nowhere is it written that you should get that.
Can I ask you something? What year was it how much money did you lose from the cruise ship going under, the festival company going under?
Well, the festival business was 250 grand.
You lost 250 grand.
Capital
and
loss.
3 years, yeah?
Yeah.
And 3 years.
Well, and that's not factoring in any time that I spent.
Yeah. All right, so we're talking 250K plus.
That's
plus
just that business.
Plus, yeah, okay.
But then the agency business, that was probably at least 400 grand in terms of loss. All the contracts got cancelled.
Jesus.
And then the gyms, I mean, I'm still losing money now. We've lost on the final gym. We lost another. We're in the whole 150 grand.
Okay, so over the last 5 years, realistically, since the start of COVID, you've lost about $1 million.
Oh, I wouldn't know the exact number.
Plus the 400,
at least
plus
700, at least 7.
Plus 150, that's 800,000. Plus all the years you didn't pay yourself because you were working in there.
Oh, definitely, at least.
So in my opinion, that's over $1 million. Why are you still doing this?
Doing this?
Yeah. Like, why don't you just fucking go work at Macca's? You know what I mean? Or go work at a gym and just be a PT and just be like, whoa, that's too hard. You know what I mean? Like, I rolled the dice. I lost it more than once, multiple times. Why are you still doing it?
Because it basically lit a fire underneath me. I was always pretty ambitious in the sense like you, in the sense that you knew that it was part and parcel of the course. I knew that it's almost like you have to pay, you have to give something to get something. And that was my price to pay for not making the right decisions. Because I put myself in that position by not doing the right things with my money and so forth. And yes, COVID happened and so forth. But I didn't grow up with anything. I knew that from a very young age, if I was going to do anything with my life, I wasn't going to get it from my parents. I wasn't going to get it from my siblings. So I knew that I had to rely on myself. Yeah. So that's why you keep going. Because you deserve better. I know what I'm capable of. And I wasn't going to let that one thing define me, because that's a business. That's not you as a person. Yeah. So letting that define you is saying, well, that's me. That's not me. I'm James. That was a business that I was part of. It didn't work. That doesn't change who I am and the fabric that I am. So who you are and how you show up is different to what you do.
Can I ask you something else? How much harder do you think you are as a person after you went through that stuff?
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Are you the same person?
No. I mean, I'm stronger, but more resilient, 100%. 100%.
So the losses make you more resilient, yeah?
But even leading up to that point.
Sometimes the wins make you more cushy
100%.
and make you more scared.
100%.
It's like they always talk about the wolf at the top of the mountain or whatever. They don't look at the ones, they get overtaken by the ones coming up because they're the ones with the...
Hungry.
I'm always wary of that. I'm always fucking fighting. I don't give a fuck who's coming up the mountain. I'll turn around and eat them on the way through. But this is where so many people... And this is what I love about you, man, as well. It's just like, it doesn't matter. You're still pushing. You know what I mean? And like, it just made you... more grey, more silver, hungrier, dirtier, grittier.
You know, this is how stubborn I am. You're pretty stubborn, but when I first started business there was this one agency with my agency business that he badmouthed me in my first year of starting the agency business because he was a bit threatened by me, but he badmouthed me to all the cruise lines. So a couple of the cruise lines just didn't work with me, and I remember calling this guy up, and. That guy today, 14 years later, you don't wish ill on anyone, but that guy motivated me every morning, first thing in the morning to get up and late at night to work hard. So whatever lights the fire inside you, use that as your power, as your superpower. That grit of knowing what you can do. Motivation's hard. Whatever's going to tickle you and get you fired up.
Yeah, the other big thing is as well, it's like, what else? What's the alternative? So I remember when I used to work on the farm.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I don't think I've ever told this story. When I used to work on the farm, I used to have, I used to play with the old corded iPhone cables and stuff. I'd put it in there. And I'd listen to property podcasts all day. And we had the bags. We used to bag stock feed in, right?
Yeah.
And they were, some of them were paper and some of them were the synthetic or whatever the hell they were. And I used to get the paper ones and I'd lay them out and I'd write my notes over these things. I've got the tags that I used to sew on the bags. I've still got them at home as memory of what I used to do to consume as much info as I could during this thing. But for me, it was like, well, what else? Okay, I could take over the family business. Am I passionate about it? No, I fucking hated it. You know what I mean? And like, I could not see myself working there forever. I could go do these couple other things, whatever. But I was like, okay, what else? Like, what is actually going to give me satisfaction and achievement in life? You know what I mean? Personal achievement, feel like I'm doing something in life. And that's where, when I realized that it was just like, okay, like I can sit in this monotonous train of this travel point. And this is why I ended up leaving soccer I was 26, 27, whatever, the last year that I ever played. It was because I realized that actually wasn't getting me anywhere. Like I was playing, I was getting paid a half decent amount, on the side. It was fine, but that was holding me back from being able to go and achieve something greater, and giving up soccer was probably one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. It was my life from when I was 4 years old to 26, 27 or whatever. I played every season. It took up almost your entire year, played the whole life. But I realized that was holding me back from the potential of being able to go off and do something else. I didn't even know what that was. When I finished soccer, that's when I went and applied for Special Forces because I was like, soccer is not going to give me the result that I want. I'm past the point now. Like realistically, I probably can't make it. And again, I would never push myself out of my comfort zone of going to try and get trials at different places, even when I was in, late teens, early 20s and stuff. Like I was nervous about doing it. I didn't push myself harder to go and do that. But I'd missed the boat, right? I missed the envelope. And then I went for the Special Forces and I had my hip surgery. So it was a blanket no, I couldn't get in. Tried to appeal it for 12 months. And then at the end of the 12 months, I was like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? And it was like, I got to that point of being like, I don't even know what I'm doing now. So then I started tossing up taking over the family business. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. But it's like, I don't know what the other options are. And I think that is when I realized, and it was that combined with when I got burnt by the old buyer's agent, that combination of all those things.
That lit the fire.
Bro, that made me go crazy. I went from doing like 2-3 deals a year to I did like 10 in 1 year. And because I sold one and then I just bought and I renovated and I built and I was just going boom, 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 just going ham. Everything that I'd learned over those years and writing all those notes and going crazy and learn everything I could and banging down all the doors trying to find people. Because that was the same year that I had 7 brokers reject me before I found the 8th.
Yeah, wow.
Going through all of it. And I just wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I could literally name all the brokers that said no to me because I still remember who they are. And some of them are still in the industry. They think they're big names and they couldn't help. Little old Sammy at 26, 27, whatever, making fuck all. You know what I mean? But that was that grit piece that took me to that different level and lit the fire. Because I knew I had no other options. So I was like, I have to do something here. That was where I went to a different level. And that's where, when I look at like your stuff and how hard you like to go and how hard you like to push, when you hear of those examples where realistically, in a sub 5 year window, you lost $1 million. Like it realistically, it was probably in like a 12 to 24 month window when it all crashed. You know what I mean? When it all fell apart, that was literally probably the $1 million loss in that window. The irreparable contracts over, cruise, festival cancelled, gym's gone, done. All during that period as well, plus all that lost time and salary and whatnot too, man. So I look at these things and I'm like, they either define you that you've lost and you succumb to that and you're okay with that and you stay in a mediocre spot in your life, or you use that as fire in your belly. Yeah. And I think the really important thing here, the biggest thing, I guess, to wrap up with this thing, really, the really important thing here is you cannot define yourself. You define yourself by your losses in the sense of turning it around, learning from it, and then pushing to another level. And this has gone crazy, right? Like we were just going to be talking about little things popping up in the portfolio and being able to deal with it. But it doesn't matter. Like put it in perspective of Jimmy losing $1 million in 2 years. So you may be having, let's say, 10 grand worth of maintenance because you had a couple of shit years over you know what I mean? Like you've had an 100x returned loss on the money that they did in that end, and you had nothing to show for it. And they might be up 200 grand. 300 grand, whatever.
With that, just the festival business, because I was talking about doing that for at least 10 years before we even did it. Yeah. And when the business closed down, I had zero regrets, even though I lost the money. I guarantee you. But the 10 years before, because I had a crack.
You rolled the dice.
And it didn't work. Yeah. And it's okay that you don't win every time. But I guarantee you, not one time did I have any resentment that it didn't work because I'm glad we had a go and it just wasn't our day, right? Yeah. But the years prior to that, I would get up myself because, you're too lazy, you don't have the balls to do it. Yeah. So the fact that you put yourself in the ring, not everyone's going to win the title. Sometimes you get knocked down, but you get back up and you win in some other area. Yeah. So for me, I made peace with that. Yeah. I was cool. Then we started doing some work and then it's gone down a whole different avenue and you start winning again. Because you've learned to lose. Yeah, but that's true, right?
100%.
100% that's true. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, this all sounds great, guys, but the people that I surround myself with, they're not really on that same length, or my parents tell me what I can't do and they're trying to shoot down. Find new people. And they can motivate you. I know what you're like. So my family motivates me. Yeah. Often the people who tell you what can't be done, they are your best motivators. Yeah. they are the blessing in disguise. They're going to get you out of bed early.
Not to take the advice on board, but to
fire you
almost
up.
give them the finger and go,
It
you know
fires
what?
you up.
Yeah.
So don't actually change it around. If they're telling you something, look at them and say, thank you. Because they're the ones that are going to motivate you. And I know that's for you. Because a lot of the results
100%.
that you've got has driven you to get to where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
So don't cry about it and then, no one's supporting me. My brother, he often says, sometimes the door is only big enough for one person to walk through. You can't take everyone. Walk through. Go and find the better self of yourself. And because the better self, your better self is through that door. You can't take everyone.
I love
Once
that,
you're on the other side of the door, then you'll be able to invite everyone in. But you need to be, that door is only big enough for you.
Yeah. I love that.
So there you go.
As a final sign off on this, guys, this doesn't matter where you are in your journey. You could literally have 0 properties. You could have 1. You could have primary residence. You could have 10. The point of this thing is to think about how you could apply it to your position. Get yourself ready for the shit that is undoubtedly going to hit you. It is all part of it. I would never have been able to build the size of the portfolio I have or have made what I have. You're literally a boy from the bush making less than 100 grand a year. Started first property making $38,000 a year. It took me 3 years to save my first deposit. If there isn't a definition of grit, mate, I do not know what is, except for maybe Rocky Balboa or that shirt you're wearing. But this is what I mean. What does it need to take for you to get your first property? Commit to that. That is the grit. You know what I mean? That process there is grit.
The savings, the deposit.
Man, 100%.
The sacrifice.
Dude, it's a sacrifice. The sacrifice is what it is. And it's those little sacrifices that build that character that then, and just be aware you are going to outgrow people by going down these avenues. But do you want to stay on that level or do you want to get to a new level? Because either they grow with you or you drop off, or they drop off, and there's other great people up there that will help you, maybe even pull you to another level.
Yeah.
And that's life. That's part of it. If you're not happy with where you are, you have to be open to getting rid of mediocrity out of your life and moving forward and moving on with it.
Look at yourself in the mirror. Be honest with yourself. Don't tell yourself porky pies.
Yeah.
You're only lying to yourself.
So regardless of whatever position you're in, whatever size portfolio, like you said, whether it's 0, 1, 5, 10, 50 property portfolio, whatever it is, I hope this has added a bit of value in terms of how you would look at this from your lens. And as you build it out or wherever you are right now, to apply it and just know it's possible for anyone, but it's a conditioning. It's like a weight. You know what I mean? Like building that. It's like resistance training, hitting the bench, building that up, doing the curls, running distance, building that cardio. It is all the same thing. Your mental capacity and your ability to handle this shit is literally, it is like weights training, and you will get bigger and better and stronger and harder to beat the more you do this thing. So keep working hard on it. Jimmy, that's a sign off from me, mate. Anything else you want to throw in?
I think we've nailed it. I hope people enjoyed it.
Listeners, I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, or if you know anyone that might need to hear this episode, please send it on. I've enjoyed doing this one, Jimmy. It's a little bit of a different one, mate. We went on a bit of a tangent. I enjoyed it. I hope the listeners did. And until next week, guys, that's another Scouting Australia podcast.